you all know me pretty well, so I want to go through a few kind of talking points. We obviously got surprisingly beat in Boulder County, and I think there's just a lot of bad information out there, and we didn't equip my advocates with the information we needed to counter that. This is politics, so we should have thought ahead on that. And we did find in many other counties. I carried 9 across the state. I carried Broomfield and Larimer, and we got what we needed to get on the ballot, so that's all fine. There's no problem. We're doing great. But I want to talk about a couple things that I've heard that kind of the Kennedy and the Johnson people are saying about me. That's right. So we hear this mostly, and I'll just sort of setting the record straight. So this will help you be advocates, because there are a lot of uncommitted. Some of you might be uncommitted, or some of you uncommitted delegates. Okay, great. So hopefully I've won you over already, but if not, I'd love to win you over now, because I just want to, but I'm also kind of equipping you with kind of countering some of the stuff people are saying. So from the Johnson camp, we hear people saying he hasn't done enough on guns, he can't be trusted on guns, Johnson did this, that, the other. Jared said in 2013 that he wasn't for assault weapons ban. So here is the problem with that. None of the people running for governor came out publicly or in any other way for an assault weapons ban in 2013, or 2014, or 2015. Now all of your candidates are for an assault weapons ban, and I actually sponsor the bill. So you can say of any of us, including me, oh, you should have had the foresight to do that back then. But we were pushing for many other gun safety measures. You remember magazine limits, universal background checks. There were a lot of things we were talking about. And assault weapons some people were talking about, but there is no one running for governor. Michael Johnson was a state senator at the time. He did not introduce nor co-sponsor an assault weapons ban. So he does not have the grounds to criticize me on that, and you can say that about any of them. I do support an assault weapons ban. I'm a co-sponsor. And also, I would put my record up against anybody on gun safety. I have an F with the NRA. I have not voted with them once during my entire time in Congress. I could not have done any more than that. And you guys, come on guys, take turns. So that... Good. Okay, Cora, why don't you take a little turn, and Caspian, why don't you go play on that other thing back there? That looks fun. See that thing back there? Or you can play that around. So, oh, there's boys. Oh, look, there's a little boy here. Go, yeah. Hi. So, and then from the Kennedy camp, a couple things. They're incongruous with one another, but we have to counter them. So one of the things that we hear, and this hit us as much in Denver, but a little bit in Boulder too, is that, Polis isn't electable because oil and gas is going to spend a whole bunch of money against them. And we hear that. And we always say we're willing to take on anybody, and I'm proud of my record of taking on oil and gas, and I feel that's where the people are, and we know they're going to miss the race. Now, at the same time, there are also people, you may have heard in your caucus or other caucuses, that said somehow Jared Polis isn't strong enough on fracking. Okay? You might have heard that in Boulder County, not so much in Denver. Now again, it's one of those that you just have to compare me to my opponents who have been quiet for the last decade on fracking. And I have been super involved, as you know, which is one of the reasons the oil and gas companies are investing against me. I have done everything from filing legal briefs, amicus briefs, to support the legality of moratoriums, to sponsoring legislation in Washington, to writing to operators like in Canada, telling them not to frack our schools, to spending my personal money donating to initiatives. I wish I had more success. And there will be people who said, why hasn't Polis had more success? Obviously, I wish I had more success too. And I've tried everything I could to push our current governor on that issue, and you know that. And it's one of the reasons I'm running for governor. Now again, I hope that Johnson and Kennedy say things about fracking. I hope they say they're for local control or something like that. Johnson specifically said he's not. Kennedy kind of doesn't answer it. But again, they were never with me in these battles I've had the last decade. So like, where are you guys? Like, welcome. I'd love it if you help me. But you have never helped at all. And this is not a new thing. We've been fighting this since, for me, I got involved when they tried to frack in an elementary school in Erie 8 years ago. And that was my first, I didn't know what it was before, like many of us. I thought, naively, I could write a letter to Encana saying, don't do this, do it somewhere else. They wrote back saying, you're very legalistic, it's our legal right to do that, oh my gosh. And then I got more involved and tried to find a way to allow for local control. We worked with Erie Moms Rising back then. So moms in Erie that were worried about fracking, all the moms have now left Erie because they didn't want to be there doing the fracking with their kids. So that original group is gone. So that's one of the other things we hear. On the winnability, again, just giving you talking points if you're talking to somebody who might otherwise support Kennedy. The best one is, it's a very simple one, Kennedy has lost already to the Republican frontrunner, Walker Stapleton. He's the person that beat her for treasurer. So running the same candidate in a rematch is not the best way for the Democrats to win. We need to have somebody new. That's me. I'm not as new to you, but I am new to the rest of the state. So we can't just put up that same rematch. Walker Stapleton is the leading Republican candidate. They have a primary, they have others, but he's their special interest favorite, Bush cousin, guy. He's probably a good chance he's their nominee. We're not afraid of him. He's a consummate Denver insider, special interest backed. I mean, we're not afraid of him. But he's already beat Kerry Kennedy once. So we have to try something new. So those are, just from what I've heard, those are the feedback. And I wish we had given everybody talking points before caucus, because I think we probably would have done a little bit better. We had talking points, but we just weren't, we were naive a little bit. We weren't negative at all. We were just like, Jared did this, Jared did this. We didn't realize, of course, we should have. This is retail politics. This is street fight. I mean, obviously Michael and Kerry and I are going to agree on, I'm sure, 90% of issues, but the difference is on some of these. And then the other difference we talk about is my proven ability to get things done and to lead. So I have the experience not only in state government, state board of ed, not only working for you in Washington, knowing how to get Republicans and Democrats to get things done. People want a governor that will take on Trump. They know that I will do that. I'm ready to do that, whether it's marijuana, whether he's going after Muslim Americans or LGBT Americans. We are ready for this inclusive vision of our state. And we're going to push that. And we're offering a really exciting and positive vision for our future. So, I mean, we have a plan for, hey, how are you? 100% renewable energy by 2040. That is a policy contrast with Kennedy, who talks about 60%. Johnson says 100% too, but I think his plan is weaker. For education, which is my passion, I mean, that's really one of the reasons I'm in public service. I've, of course, taken on Betsy DeVos in Washington. Our focus here is expanding universal preschool and kindergarten to every kid. Because that can make the biggest single difference for families. I can afford preschool almost next year and kindergarten for my son, but not every family can. Why should my kids have an advantage over families that can? And you might not know this if you haven't had a kid in a while in this state, but all we have is half-day kindergarten in this state. You have to pay for full day, and you have to pay for preschool. Unless you're very low income, there's some slots for free. But if you're middle class, or even struggling to be middle class, you have to pay full price for kindergarten and preschool. Now, again, BDSD, Denver, they do a little better. They try to find some additional slots. They try to have some scholarships. But even here, it's really hard. And we also talk about preschool and kindergarten, by the way, as a cost of living issue. Because for young families, the most expensive thing they have to deal with after rent or mortgage is going to be childcare. And so often it affects that decision. Can one spouse have to stay out of a job for a while? Or do they have to pick the less expensive childcare rather than the quality preschool, right? Or do they have to scrape together everything and even sell their car to try to get their kid into a full-day kindergarten, right? So they're the most important years educationally, and it's an economic issue. And I am the only candidate focused on that. Now again, it's not that Johnson or Kennedy would say they're against preschool and kindergarten. I'm sure they wouldn't. I'm sure they love it all. But my commitment is we will go to the ballot within 2 years to establish preschool and kindergarten for every child in this state. That will be the centerpiece of what we want to accomplish in my administration on education, okay? And I believe we can get it done. I'm very optimistic we can build a broad-based coalition with the business community, with Republicans, with Democrats, to get this done. And what a difference that would make for our state. So with that, if I accomplish nothing else as governor, I would love if we leave that legacy of preschool and kindergarten. So I'd love to hear what's on your minds. Hi everybody, how are you?
Doing well,
we just talked about a few talking points, and we'll probably come back to some of them. But were there any other things you heard at caucus that you want our response to?
On the oil and gas fracking bid, this was actually at caucus training. I was seated next to a long-time caucuser who was anchored against you because of something happened years ago with fracking in Boulder County.
Yeah.
What could that have been, and why are they still anchored on it?
They were for or against fracking, first of all, that person. They were
know.
probably against. I get a vote for both sides. No, I mean...
They were against you for Kennedy because of something they heard in that.
Okay, we'll have to guess a little bit.
Jared, it was look at the flip-flop you made.
What's that?
The
Yeah,
flip-flop you made.
so again, in some caucuses, the story was Jared is taking on oil and gas. They're going to spend a lot of money against him. He can't win. and then we say, yes, we can. But if the story is he hasn't done enough on fracking, which I think is just a bad, or he didn't push pick and looper hard enough, or he stopped financing initiatives that could have helped, that's all fine, criticism. But remember, Kerry Kennedy and Michael Johnson did 0 for fracking. So you have to compare me against other people. You can't just say the ideal. I tried as hard as I could on that, and I still do. And I wish I had more success. I do. No one wants to succeed more than myself on this issue on behalf of not just Boulder County, but our district. But we got no help from the Denver establishment Democrats, and whether Kerry was the deputy mayor of Denver, or Michael was the state senator. There was no help on this issue. So, again, I think the answer to that is, okay, we should push Jerry to do more, but has Kennedy or Johnson ever done a thing on this? The answer is no, they haven't. Maybe, I think for the very first time in this campaign, they even talk about it, and they're not as specific about what they would do as what we are with our plans. Yeah?
This is about, part of the reason the CEA is against Boston is because of the support for teachers' evaluations being linked to test scores. He's the one who pushed that bill through. We hate it. Teachers hate it. Parents don't like it. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, that was what was the bill number? 180. What was it? 191. Yes, I have said publicly, and what I want to do is reopen that whole thing. It did not work out at all. I will say that I think Michael Johnson was well intended. I think he probably tried. He did not pull in teachers into that process. No. Teachers need to be not only at the table, but really helping to drive this discussion about meaningful support for them and input into how they can improve ongoing training. So I have said we'd reopen it. I mean, I don't come with any preconceived specifics other than that. We want to reopen the law. We want to work with the legislature and require legislative change, and we're going to pull in teachers at the very ground level to do that. Leslie, by the way, our very own Leslie Smith, the former director of Boulder Valley School District, is running to be a regent of the University of Colorado. So I just want to acknowledge Leslie Smith.
Even statewide. So what came up in my room was the fact that they didn't like that you have so much money and you can self-fund. Yeah. And I pointed out that you're very generous based on Angelica and her campaign with wanting a progressive down ballot. Since I am an environmental scientist running against somebody that works for Anadarko as a Democrat, I said this is something really good that Jared is generous, the team is generous. It can help all candidates win down ballot. This is a great year.
Yeah, for those who care about our down ballot races, I want to also acknowledge we have Mike Foote is here, our candidate for district attorney, currently our terrific state representative, has joined us as well. Rafi Mercury is running for county clerk. Other candidates in the room. Oh, Sonia Juarez Lewis running to take Mike Foote's place. Yeah. So it's all, yes. So East Boulder County, Sonia Juarez Lewis, countywide Michael Foote, countywide Rafi, statewide Leslie. So we, I believe in field operations to win for down ballot and governor. We have 10 field offices in the state. We opened our first one in Grand Junction. It's another one when people say, oh, can Polis win? He's from Boulder. They do say that outside of Boulder. They probably say that about you, Leslie, too. Yes. We opened our very first field office in Grand Junction. We had 120 people on a cold Saturday morning in Grand Junction that were excited that Democrats are even showing up in a traditional Republican county. And we're going to fight there. And you know what? I don't think we're going to win Mesa County, but if Democrats normally get 34%, I want to get 38% or 40%. And we want to bring Leslie and other Democrats with us statewide and in our targeted state senate races that we need to do. Rafi and Mike they're running in Boulder County. They just have primaries. Once they win those, you don't have to worry about the general. But and Sonia has a good general too. She just has her primary to worry about. But again, we want to invest in the whole ticket, and that's my track record. I think we also try to talk about the fact that I've been successful as a positive. I would hope that people want somebody who has successfully, run businesses and created jobs, and I've done that. Now, that's not the only qualification. I don't just show up and say, I've been a successful businessman, vote for me, because that's not enough. But it's also not something we shy away from. In addition to having created jobs in our businesses, I started schools, served on school board, and then represented the district for 10 years in Congress. So when we talk about our progressive issues, I feel that the business side actually gives me a leg up in talking about something like single-payer health care, Medicare for all, which I support, because I talk about it as a small business owner. When I had 4 or 5 people and I was starting out, the biggest distraction was having to pick and administer and run healthcare benefits for our employees. That is a big detriment to small businesses in particular. I don't know if large businesses even like it much better. No other Western industrialized country puts that burden on businesses. So, you know, as progressives, we all care about the human element. We could talk forever about that. But when you're ambassadors to your moderate or Republican friends, talk about that. Why do we put the full burden of health care on businesses on this country instead of having Medicare for all and letting businesses focus on what they do? Yeah.
Sir, on DACA, we're hoping to like get a deal done, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Is anything going on, or is it going to carry on into the election?
So, I mean, the president is horrible in so many ways. I mean, just so many ways. Legislatively, we could have gotten a deal done, but he threw cold water on this, the only Senate plan that had a reasonable chance, which was the Graham-Durbin one. I was a sponsor through our Problem Solvers Caucus of a similar one in the House. It was based on the Graham-Durbin one. That had something like that as a real pathway, but Trump threw cold water on it. Nobody knows what the guy wants because he's just kind of all over the place. And then just last week he tossed out, when you do the spending bill at the end of the month, solve DACA in it. But then he's against most of the solutions, so I don't know. Legislatively, yes, we can solve it. 60-70% of the House and Senate absolutely could agree. There's no problem. But the president has to be there and sign it. I mean, that's it. I mean, if he pulls out, enough Republicans pull out that we can't do it. So, and it'll be, you know what it'll be, the basis of it. It'll have money for their stupid wall, not the whole wall, but there's going to be border security money in exchange, not just permanent DACA, but a pathway to citizenship for DACA. And under Graham-Durbin, what we're so excited about is also temporary work permits for the parents of American kids. So that's about 3 million more. Whether we get that or not, I don't know, but that is a big thing. That's what President Obama tried to do with DAPA, which was delayed by the courts, and then they waited out the clock, and he wasn't able to get done across the finish line. Let me just say to our new friends, I wanted to give you a few talking points from caucus that we learned that they're coming after me with in our responses so that we can be effective advocates. From the Johnson camp, we hear Polis not strong enough on guns. I did this on guns. Jared once said something that he didn't like assault weapons ban in 2012. So the answer is none of the people running for governor supported publicly in any way that we can find, and they haven't corrected us, assault weapons ban in 2012. So there's not, Michael Johnson was a state senator, he didn't co-sponsor an assault weapons ban. So yes, he can criticize me for not supporting it at that time, but he didn't either, neither did Kerry Kennedy. Nobody did. I have an F rating with the NRA, I've never voted with them once since I'm in Congress. We were focused on magazine bans and universal background checks and a lot of other things, and so that's why we weren't focused on that then. And yes, I do support an assault weapons ban. In fact, I co-sponsored Bill Mapp. So that's the answer on that one. The other one is fracking we talked about. We get attacked from all sides on this. In some caucuses, we said Polis has upset oil and gas so much they're going to spend millions of dollars against them. He can't win. We need somebody that hasn't upset oil and gas as much. And our response to that is, Jared's somebody who will stand up for the people, and that's where the voters are. That's what they want. The money cannot buy an election. And we saw that in Broomfield, where the oil and gas industry spent, I think, 20-1 at the end of the day, and their health and safety initiative still passed. And then the other way we get attacked on fracking is Polis hasn't done enough. He withdrew some initiative, or we don't like everything he did, and why did he do this or that? And I say that's all fair, but Michael Johnson and Kerry Kennedy didn't do a thing to help us the last 10 years on fracking. Not a thing. I mean, I can't. Kerry, they were both in positions where if they had even voiced support for some of these initiatives, or voiced support for local control, we could be in a better place today. And now they say maybe they're there a little bit, but I've been fighting this issue for 10 years. And they are new to this and have not done a thing to help us the last decade. So that's kind of the other response on that. Yes?
One of the things we heard at the caucus is that Kerry Kennedy talks about Tabor and you don't. And I tried very hard to talk about your disconnection and how that was going to lead to a solution that was going to be palatable for this state. But getting rid of Tabor is number one for me. How do I help people understand your position?
Yeah, of course we talk about that. So I don't know, I hadn't heard that one. They said I don't talk about that. Yeah, I mean, that is, of course, to be able to invest in what we need for our schools and for our roads, we have to find a way to get the voters to say yes to this. And so we will build that coalition to go to the voters. There's been several successes over the years. Referendum C, there was a timeout, the tobacco tax, the marijuana tax, Amendment 23. There's been several failures as well. And we will build a broad coalition to go to the ballot to get the resources we need, in particular for our schools, institutions of higher education, and our roads and infrastructure. Mike?
Jared, I just want to add something about the claim about oil and gas spending a lot of money against you.
Yeah.
And what people have said that to me before, and of course, the way I say it is, well, they're going to spend tons of money against any Democrat.
Yeah.
Because you and other candidates are not spending a bunch of time sucking up to the industry about how big of advocates they're going to be. The Republicans on the other side, they line up to try to say they're going to do even more than the other one for the industry. So of course they're going to be spending money. It's going to be for any Democrat, anyone with a D after their name, they're going to be spending money against.
That's a very good point. They're going to be spending millions of dollars to help the Republican nominee. It doesn't matter who the Democratic nominee is. I mean, that's it. And they're going to be our biggest block financially to take in the state Senate. They're going to be putting tons of money into that. So I mean, that is what it is. That's a very good point.
My name is Chris Hines. I'm an uncommitted delegate. I want to apologize. I don't know anyone here except Representative Foote,
Yes.
because my representative is Stan Garnett's son. So
Alec.
who you're looking to replace. So,
Oh, wait, you're in, I'm sorry, you're in Denver.
Yeah.
Oh, you came up from Denver?
Yeah.
Oh, we had a...
I've been following you around.
Yeah, no, we had a delegate reception in Denver the other day.
I know.
Okay.
They invited me. I
But we
got
welcome
there
you to Boulder, so...
You were gone.
Yeah.
So, and then you had a thing earlier today.
Yeah, we're trying to be available everywhere. So.
I missed that one.
Anyway,
So
we made it.
so
Yes.
I finally, I'm going to come, the mountain's going to come to Muhammad. Anyway, but I advocate for people with disabilities. As you may have guessed, I have a stake in the interest. Is that how that goes? Anyway, but predominantly in the state legislature, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are. Sometimes it's easy to take a position like HR 620 that's watering down the Americans with Disabilities Act, but with more complex disability issues, how do you go about the thought process on how you take a position with disability issues?
Well, I would want to hear from and talk to not just advocates from the disability community, but just people who live with disabilities to find out how laws would affect them and their livelihood. You know, I voted against that horrible. Republicans, among many other things, are trying to strip the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I would also say, we have a president who has personally attacked people with disabilities and mocked them. I believe in an inclusive vision for our state, and that means that we value the contributions of everybody, of immigrants, of LGBT Coloradans, of Coloradans with disabilities, of Coloradans regardless of their immigration status. And so that is the image that we want to have, and we want policies to back that up. So I'm excited to kind of work with advocates as well as just people with disabilities, talking about their real life issues, in the workplace, at home, et cetera, to try to make Colorado a model to provide the strongest possible protections here.
Yeah, we're already on the leading edge. We're not the model necessarily, but we're certainly, I would say, above average as far as protection for people with disabilities and inclusiveness for everyone, including people with disabilities.
That's great. And it's about access. It's about both work, home, recreation, public accommodation, all of those. So I look forward to hearing more specifics from you too.
Sure.
Hey. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've known Jared forever. I met him in somebody's living room like 15 years ago. And this man shows up, he listens to everybody, any input you have, he listens. He listens to the 5th graders when he goes to visit their class, and it winds up in his policy. So one of the cool things about you is that you are actually accessible. So.
Thank you. And we, on the metrics, we have more town halls than any other member of Congress in Colorado. I have been almost every school in the district, and I can't do that everywhere as governor, but I will be more accessible. I won't just have these staged bill signings when I go to Pueblo or Grand Junction. We will hear from people. We will have meetings. We will, have public interfaces. We'll meet with advocates on the community with disabilities. We will, try to hear from real people in different areas. Yeah.
Jared, so this is my first time as a delegate. And one of the things about the prison I'm representing is in the room we have a lot of seniors, and they were talking about pension reform and affordability for seniors. And I feel like I want to be able to speak on that issue well, even because it's not something I understand.
So it's actually a really good issue. Now, it's not an issue, I don't think, where Kennedy Johnson and I have any difference. I don't think there's any light between us. But our Republican opponent, Walker Stapleton, he has made a target of para. He wants to end the defined benefit program of our state retirement system. This is the retirement system for teachers, for state employees, for firefighters, for people who work for the state agencies. So it is very, very important because people have paid in and played by the rules. And the truth is, it is in need of some changes to be actuarially sound because people are living longer. Now, the governor has a proposal, para itself has a proposal. Don't want to get too much into the specifics other than to say from a values perspective, my fundamental value will be protecting the beneficiaries because they paid in and played by the rules, and it's not anybody's fault. And so if there is any changes, it needs to be spread across everybody, not just taken out on the backs of retirees. So what the Republicans are trying to do in this area is fairly radical. They're trying to tell people who plan their whole lives, who paid into a system, or maybe you're midway, right? 15 years into a career as a teacher, they are planning when they can retire and what they're going to get. That Walker Stapleton wants to change that. By the way, for the worse. I mean, he'll have some fancy math that says for somebody it might be better. But basically, you won't know what you're going to get. It depends instead on what your investments get, which who knows. And we need to protect that state pension program. So that will be a big deal, I think, in general, especially if Walker Stapleton is the nominee. We're going to talk about that a lot. Because there's a lot of current and retired public employees in this state. And it's even more important to entire economies. A place like Walsenburg or Beulah, Colorado, where the biggest source of income into those communities are para pensions for people that work for the state. And the whole town and counties will fall apart without that, in addition to the individual piece. So that, I think that's what they were probably referring to. Yes?
I know you'll, as governor, you'll be working for all Coloradans.
Yes.
And a huge part of our state is rural. I'm interested in what you think the top 3 priorities are for rural Colorado right now.
Sure. So rural broadband and connectivity, incredibly important. If we want our rural areas to be part of Colorado's future, we need to make sure that they have high-speed internet access. We have a plan to do that. I had an op-ed I co-authored with the rural county commissioner. It's on our website. We have a detailed plan on how we're going to do that. I would say second, we talk about renewable energy as a rural issue, because guess where, our goal is very aggressive, 100% renewable energy by 2040, but the Eastern Plains are really the energy corridor of Colorado. So it doesn't mean you go to a farmer and you say, I want to tell you about climate change. You don't do that. You say, I want to tell you about a way where you can get more income from your land. We can lease it out. Over in this corner, you can have some wind turbines. And by the way, there might be a job for your kid to be able to stay in town for construction and maintenance instead of having to leave town to seek an opportunity to go live on the Front Range. So it's a very exciting rural issue in terms of what the benefits are of renewable energy. I would say the third one is a universal issue, and it's one that I touched on earlier, but frankly, preschool and kindergarten will benefit our rural communities even more than our wealthier suburban communities that have a little bit more of it. In many rural school districts, you can't even pay for full-day kindergarten because they don't have it. They only have half-day, and some don't even have half-day. So if we want our kids to not be further left behind, the single biggest beneficiary, everybody's going to benefit. We'll benefit in Boulder and Denver, but the biggest beneficiary will be kids that live in rural areas, some of whom, even if the parents could afford it, might not have even had access to a preschool and kindergarten because it's a small town. If only a few parents can afford it, it doesn't exist. If it's for everybody, then there's enough critical mass to have it at the school, right? And so that's why they don't even have it in many cases. Yes.
Hi.
Hey, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Good.
You've spent 10 years in Washington.
Yes.
What connections, what benefits are you bringing back to us that you can maintain, that we can talk about?
This is a good idea because mostly Washington is a negative for people. Luckily, I've done a lot of other things, and I'm not just running as like a congressman who wants to be governor. But there are some positives, and so I can touch on those. First of all, I have relationships with other governors and people running for governor. For instance, my good friend Michelle Lujan Grisham, colleague of mine, front runner for New Mexico governor, our neighboring state. My former colleague Jay Inslee is the governor of Washington State. So when we talk about things like forming a multi-state single-payer consortium for universal health care, I will have many of those relationships in place to be able to work with some of those other sitting governors. Secondly, I help write some of the laws that we have to operate under here. So let's talk about 2 Student Succeeds Act and Affordable Care Act. So I helped write both of those laws, and I know how to better utilize our state flexibility around reaching better outcomes for both healthcare as well as for education by using the flexibility we have. So those would be 2 ways.
Thank you.
I can give you another issue with the rural farm. I grew up in western Colorado. One of the issues is that most of the programs anymore are oriented towards.
Come on in. Well, let's, are there more other folks out there? You can come on in a little bit, okay. Yeah.
They're targeted towards commercial farms.
Yeah.
The Farm Credit Union now, the latest thing it funded was a $452 million loan to a solar farm.
Yep.
My brother-in-law, back in the day, my dad used to put land in the land bank. Well, you can't do that anymore because you have to have over 1,000 acres, and I think it's close to $1 million in income before you qualify for these things. And if you look online to try to figure out how to apply, you need to be a lawyer. And so that's part of the reason the rural areas have gone against the Democrats and against NAFTA and those things because they see everything is benefiting the large corporate farms.
Yeah, and I voted against the Farm Bill for that very reason every time it's come up, because it's basically a giveaway to large corporate agriculture. It's hard to do because there are still some programs in it that help small farmers, but when you look at the whole thing and you have to do this, you weigh things, it's been a very bad federal effort. The state does get to appoint a State Department of Agriculture commissioner. I've talked to the current one. We would want to have a new approach that obviously would be focused on small farmers. We are excited about high value crops, whether it's hemp, opportunities in eastern Colorado, whether it's organic farming, whether it's working with small farmers to find new ways to do things, as well as incorporating into the revenue stream the renewable energy side, right? If part of their property can be solar or wind. I'll give you just a quick example. I visited a company down in Durango that basically they'll go to farmers and they say, we will replace all your energy needs with a smaller mid-scale solar. We pay for it. We study your energy bill. We'll charge you 90% of what you've been paying, and we get the rest. So they only do that where it works. It actually works for most farmers, and they actually cannot sell that in Colorado. So they do this in Arizona. They do it in California because we don't have with our rural electric co-ops the net metering that we have in Excel. So you can do that in an Excel service area, but our farmers mostly aren't in Excel. Our farmers mostly are in areas with rural electric co-ops. So we want to work with the state legislature to bring our rural electric co-ops along so they do the same kind of net metering that Excel does, which the governor has more direct authority over under PUC. That alone saves money for farmers, good for renewable energy, good for jobs. So it's kind of one of those win-win things. Yes?
Yeah, I'm interested in your strategies and battle plan for western Colorado. I spent 40 years building Telluride and came over here about 5 years ago.
Oh, welcome.
Well,
so,
but the point is that in the last congressional election, they just didn't vote.
Yeah.
Gail couldn't get them out to vote. If they voted, we'd have won that seat. And they don't. They have an opinion of eastern Colorado and the power structure surrounding Denver on a political basis that is kind of a wet rag when you're over there trying to campaign. Do you have a strategy over there? Do you have a team?
So Colorado is many different states, right? I mean, you're in southern Colorado, and you might think southern Colorado is Pueblo. Guess what? A third of Colorado is south of Pueblo, and there's Trinidad, Colorado, where they consider Pueblo central Colorado. There's the western slope. There's southwestern Colorado, where you almost feel like you're in New Mexico some of the time. There's the eastern plains, and guess what? There's a difference between the northeast and east, where they have wet or irrigated agriculture, and the southeast, where they do dry agriculture and rely on the rain. So, I mean, there's differences in these different areas. So, in western Colorado, we opened up our first field office in Grand Junction. No, play inside, okay? One of the things we're excited about that actually Telluride is a leader in is the startup and location-independent employment infrastructure that is beginning to exist across western Colorado. So for instance, in Montrose, I visited co-working space. And here in Boulder, we all know what co-working space is. It's where you can get a desk for, $99 a month, and you can either work for a big company there or start your own company. We did not traditionally have that kind of self-employment or startup infrastructure in western Colorado. It's beginning to exist. The Telluride Foundation is actually underwriting much of this, not just for Telluride itself, because they have a regional approach to job creation. So when they look at a place like Nucla, Colorado, not too far from Telluride, you've probably been there. This is a town where they pass a symbolic law that you have to carry a gun if you're in town, or they give you a ticket. And this is a town with, I think, 40% unemployment, 35, whatever. It's very, very high. We want to find a way where ideas from the creative economy that is kind of international can start in a place like Telluride, and then as they grow, you're not going to grow a business in Telluride. It's a very expensive place. If you need an office, if you need manufacturing, if you need distribution, you're looking at Nuclear, you're looking at other areas nearby to help create that employment base. I would also say one thing Gail Schwartz, I think, did do well, and I would focus on too in Western Colorado, is the outdoor recreation and tourism industry and this defending our public lands. I think it is a bigger issue now than it was. Gail ran hard on that, and that was good, but she didn't have Trump to run against. People didn't fully believe that our public lands were in jeopardy. There's great buy-in to our public lands. That's a place we find common cause with gun owners and hunters, right? They want their guns, but they want someplace to use them, and they really care about public lands. So that is a more imminent threat now. That will get people out more to vote than when Gail was talking about it, because people said, yes, of course we want to keep our lands public, but we don't really believe anybody's going to do anything different. Well, now I think they do. So it's become more of a voting issue.
And just to follow up, is that, I mean, the concern over there is that Denver, Boulder et al. Runs the state, so why should we bother?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons, again, we opened up our very first field office in Grand Junction. We wanted to show that we value the Western Slope, and they were excited about that. Another thing, by the way, when people say, can somebody from, Boulder win, when I'm in Grand Junction or when I'm in Pueblo, I actually have an applause line I use. I say, I'm the only candidate not from Denver. And they go, woo! Because actually Denver often has a worse reputation. People sometimes think people in Boulder are, they're in another plane or whatever. Denver, they think, tries to control everything. It's a little more sinister. They're like, oh, Denver is getting their fingers everywhere. That's, and I have a broad perspective because of my district. I go up to the Wyoming border. I represent, Grand Eagle, Summit County. So this is the regional perspective that I bring, which plays well even in the areas I haven't represented yet in Western Colorado. Rafi.
One platform point I haven't heard much about is that you want to promote the employee ownership of
businesses. Yes, big.
How do you plan to promote that?
Yeah.
What are your specific
So one thing I'm excited about, so we all care about the policy issue, and one of the issues that plagues our country is we have had greater income disparities than ever before, and wealth disparities. Now, they exist along racial lines, and they exist geographically, and they become greater and greater over time as the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and people in the middle are squeezed. So what are the solutions? There are some that, again, I think probably all Democrats support, but I talk about, like raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, like if we can, freeing up municipalities to set minimum wage higher if we can't do this statewide. The strength of the organized labor movement is very important. In fact, you can trace the increase in the income disparities to the decline of membership in organized labor, and it's almost an exact correlation. But the other one we talk about, Rafi, is how we can have more of a cultural norm in our state, and an economic norm of employee ownership in different ways of doing it. So there's things, co-ops, ESOPs, stock options, equity grants. There's companies that do this. You probably all had New Belgium beer. It's 100% employee owned. We kicked off my campaign in Colorado Springs at Save-A-Lot grocery store. That's 100% employee-owned grocery store. They have 11 in the state. So our particular proposals, and many of them are, again, Republican-friendly. We can get Republicans to vote for these. Removing the red tape and legal costs of becoming employee-owned, preferences in state contracting, a state branding and marketing campaign around employee ownership, and finding a way to provide, through a state employee ownership center, the technical assistance to particularly small and mid-sized companies that want to do this, because that's one of the barriers even when the will is there. I talked to an entrepreneur in Loveland about a 30-person company a few months ago. He wants to implement employee ownership, but when he talked to the lawyers and accountants, they said it'll cost $150,000, $200,000 to make that conversion. That's like their whole profits for a year. It just can't, it's not feasible. If we had free technical assistance through an employee ownership center, very small state investment. I mean, we're talking about 6, 7 people that can then be helping others, some of whom are professional lawyers and accountants. That would allow companies like that to do that. So our goal is, we want our state, Colorado, to be the leader in employee ownership after after I'm in office for 8 years. Right now it's Vermont, thanks, by the way, in part to the effort of Bernie Sanders. When before he was a senator, he worked as mayor to create an employee ownership center there. And he and I do some of the joint legislation nationally on employee ownership, but I truly feel it's a way that we can make our economy work for everybody. Well, yeah, Mark, how are you?
Well, my voice isn't good, but the rest of me is doing okay.
You do say you're Jeffco, though, aren't you? Or are you?
Yeah, I lived up, but I work up here. So.
Yeah. No, I know you work up here. Yeah.
I always come to these things because Marlon was one of my students.
My husband was one of Mark's students.
And your sister-in-law, for that.
Oh, cool.
But, and I think this is going to come up because, well, this is going to be a really dry year. Water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ultimate limiting resource around here. And there's talk of renegotiating the Colorado River Compact. Ideas?
So one, there's a lot we could talk. We could have a whole seminar on water, but so under Governor Hickenlooper, we have our first statewide water plan, multi-stakeholder, multi-regional, Western Slope, Front Range. Couple problems with it is it leaves a lot of unfunded infrastructure. So, guys, you okay? Okay, so we have to find a way to fund water infrastructure for our growth. We need to find more ways to conserve water. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. Good to see you guys. We'll forgive you for going to yell. So we also need to find more low-hanging fruit around conservation, those for best practices for farmers that can save money and save water, and also looking at, for new subdevelopments and new growth, more efficient water practices. Because the more we can do around the per capita side efficiency, the smaller the overall pie is of what we need to actually get done. So I'll be excited to tackle this. I represent a district that has a lot of the source water, Grand County, so I have a different perspective than just the communities that are downstream, and we really need to work in a statewide way to do that.
It's a complicated issue. The Supreme Court's heard more water rights cases than anything else.
Yeah, and which is also true. It's enmeshed in legal aspects, so the ability to operate in the political realm is limited because of legal rights that even pre-exist Colorado being a state. I mean, some of them pre-exist our country existing. I mean, some of them date to Spanish water rights from, in southern Colorado. So there's this whole legal network that you operate under, and I know enough to know that I need to talk to a good water lawyer before, offering specifics.
Would you be looking at curtailing water futures companies in the state?
Interesting.
Brooklyn, New York, who are buying our water.
Yeah, no, and by the way, I would also add that fracking is part of that equation. It's 1 to 2% of the water. I mean, and they like to say it's only 1.5%. Well, yes, it is, but because it's not, there are some who somehow think it's like the biggest driving thing. But still, that is a lot of water. So I mean, that's included in this discussion. Efficiency. How can we make sure that it doesn't all just have to be disposed of? How can we have more efficient practices? All of those things. And I'd be happy to look at the financial stuff. I'm not an authority on that, so I'd love to hear about what that means and how we can, what authority we have, first of all. There's also a legal question. I don't know the answer to that, but I would love to look at that area. What's that? Yeah. And interstate compacts, yeah.
So the last time my husband and I got involved in politics was Prop 8 back in California, and he's a native Spanish speaker, and we were shocked how little preparation and outreach there was from that campaign to reach out to native Spanish speakers.
Yeah.
What is your campaign's, focus? Do you have native Spanish speakers on staff to do outreach and communication? And what's your plan?
Yo puedo hablar español. Pienso que puedo hablar más o menos bien. Y tengo muchas conversaciones en todas partes del estado en español con gente en español es su primer idioma. Y también tengo algunos videos de red en español sobre cosas como preschool and renewable energy. And I have our website translated into Spanish too, when we've done a couple Spanish videos. Because I'm, tal vez, porque yo soy el único miembro de Cámara Nacional de Colorado que puede hablar español, yo estoy en Telemundo y Univision mucho, describiendo las cosas nacionales. So I'm on Telemundo and Univision pretty regularly talking about national issues because I'm the only member of the Colorado delegation who speaks Spanish, although now Mike Hoffman actually speaks passable Spanish. He has a horrible accent. He just has this horrible accent. But he actually speaks it like passively to his credit.
Jared, can I add something
yes.
to that? So Jared started the
very first Latina
I did.
advisory board for CD2, for CD2. And that group, when we started it in 2009, the high school graduation rate for Latino Latinas was 51%. Some of the initiatives that Jared led for that allowed us in 6 years to raise the high school graduation rate to 70%. I was a part of that. That was led by Jared. It was amazing, and we need to do more, but that was incredible what you did.
And so, by the way, remember Sonia Juarez Lewis for state representative. She would be
the governor of Colorado right now.
who?
John Higgins.
That's right. Sonia would be Boulder County's first Latina or Latino, I believe, the first Latino or Latina that we send to Denver to represent our county. So we're very excited about that.
Can I piggyback very
Yeah.
quickly on what you just said? Prop 8 was one of the first times I got involved in LGBT politics, and I'd support you for your policies,
Sure.
but having been out for 18 years, it's meaningful to me to go for the first gay man to be governor of the state. How should I talk to other delegates about that?
So no, it's actually a good point, because one of the things you'll hear from some of the Kerry County supporters is, oh, Colorado should have its first woman governor. You know, we've had women representatives, we've had women everything else, but many other states have women governors, we haven't. So a good response is, of course, we actually have the opportunity in Colorado to have the first openly gay governor in the history of the United States. And take that, Mike Pence. So I think that, and you know, and then if anybody thinks it's an issue electorally, I really don't feel it is. These days. Tammy Baldwin is one in Wisconsin. My friend Kirsten Sinema is running for Senate in Arizona, which is a harder state than Colorado. If anybody isn't going to vote for me over that, they're not about to vote for any Democrat. I mean, there's just no way they're voting for a Democrat if they're not voting for somebody over that. But yeah, it's a chance for Colorado to make history. I mean, and you know, and I'm gay, and I know how exciting it was to see like Gus Kenworthy and Adam Rippon competing in the Olympics, and Brittany Bowe for the lesbians in the room. Although Adam Rippon kind of got all the camera, but I mean that's exciting. I mean that was impossible. Even people like Johnny Weir weren't able to be out like not that long ago. So I mean this is exciting. So no, I mean don't be afraid to talk about the historic nature of that for sure.
I gotta go to one.
Oh, is there one back here? And then we'll just switch for that. Anybody who has not asked one first. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I ended up as a Ginsburg delegate because I quickly realized that everybody was going to compete to be a delegate for you.
Oh, that's right.
How can I do this? At any rate, I do like his proposal for the
I'm gonna get one for you.
Yes.
Here.
School business collaboration, and I was wondering where you were at with that.
So
Limited edition.
I'm good friends with Noel. Has really impressed me. I knew him a little bit before. I mean, you know, he'd been to Democratic fundraisers. I'd seen him, but I have been very impressed with what he talks about in the campaign trail. It is very unlikely that he can make the ballot. He didn't get enough delegates. He has a few. I would be honored to have the support of his delegates. Oh, I'll open it for you. So I am excited about, for instance, career-wise, the work that he has done professionally in putting together a program where it's part of the picture, not the entire picture, but where Coloradans, particularly those who aren't going to college and high school, get real work experience and real job skill experience. Now, there's more to it. We also need partnerships with our community colleges around dual and concurrent enrollment. You've probably heard me talk about that a lot. And also some of the traditional union apprenticeship programs which need to be pulled into this as well. But the key sort of question that he has part of the answer to, a big part, is how do we make sure that our students that are going through high school and are not going to college can actually get a skill that allows them to support themselves in the 21st century workforce. And a big part of it are career-wise, union apprenticeships, dual and concurrent enrollment, and those need to be available to every kid in the state. It's currently in a pilot phase, his career-wise, and the dual and concurrent enrollment is hit or miss. I mean, it just depends what high school you're at, whether you can hear about it. Yeah, great question though.
That is so in Western Colorado.
It is, yeah. Yes?
Hi, I'm Eliberto Mendoza. I work with community action programs. And a lot of the families that I work with that live in Boulder County are people who are at around 125% of poverty. And they're working 2-3 jobs just to continue to live here. And many of them are actually leaving the county, moving to other counties where they can afford to live. And I wonder, after maybe you already touched that, it came a little bit late, but around issues around affordable housing and or creating the kind of employment, the kind of economy that actually works for all and provides opportunity for income growth.
So that's great about affordable housing and how we can address this income growth issue. So that's one of the reasons we talk about employee ownership, strengthening the organized labor movement, raising the minimum wage, preschool and kindergarten. I don't know if you were here when I talked about this, but huge economic issue for young families. The cost of childcare after renter is the biggest one. So universal preschool and kindergarten helps a lot. And then yes, partnering with local communities on affordable housing. We still need city councils and commissioners that value affordable housing opportunities, because the state does not do zoning or density or anything, but we can partner with them. And I'll give you one example, and then we'll end on this, and I'll just visit with a while, of how I was able to partner with Summit County in my capacity as a representative in Congress. Summit County has an even higher cost of living. You can imagine if you're a teacher in Breckenridge, if you work at a store, if you're on the police force, where can you live anywhere close to town? The answer is you probably can't. You have to commute from Boulder or Leadville, and it's in treacherous winter highways. It's not easy. So Breckenridge wants to have a middle class because communities are strongest. When communities are strongest when they have a middle class. So because we have a lot of federal land around there, we were able to do a 40-acre land exchange with Summit County, where we conveyed, I passed a bill to do this. I worked with the 3 commissioners there to convey 40 acres to the county for purposes of creating 300 units of housing that is middle-class attainable housing. We call it affordable housing, but it's small a, because when you say affordable housing has a specific definition. This is attainable middle-class housing, you know, $200,000 for ownership, $250,000. You have to work in the community to have a job there to qualify. It's not for us Boulder and Denver second homeowners who want a place in Breck. It's for people who live there. So we were able to do that kind of partnership. We got the bill through. We did it with the commissioners. They have the proposal out now for the developer to build the 300 units. So those kinds of partnerships, looking at our portfolio of state lands and assets, the way that we can convey through restricting the deed, that so much of it has to be made affordably and integrated in. We have some levers, but we also need counties and cities to be part of this discussion, because a governor can't just come in and put things down at all. So thank you guys. This is fun. I thank you. We're doing great. We need your help. This is our Boulder campaign headquarters. If you're willing to sign up to volunteer for us, we would really appreciate it. Where's our wonderful staff? If you could raise your hands, I see them there. Let us know. And we do need your help. So not just, of course, at the assembly. I hope some of you are willing to go to the Broomfield Assembly for us too. Awesome. That's the final one. And then we go right into the June election. And in the June election, there's something different this time that you probably know about, but you may not. Unaffiliated voters, the biggest group in Colorado, can vote in the primary in June. And I think that's a fine thing. It's a good thing. So we're talking to a broader group of people than just the Democrats. And frankly, we're talking to more young people, which is a wonderful thing, because while a plurality of everybody in our state is unaffiliated, a majority of people under 30 are unaffiliated. So it's actually an outright majority. So for whatever reason, and probably in part due to what both parties do, they've turned a lot of people off, and a lot of people might be just as progressive as any of us, but they don't want to call themselves a Democrat. And that's fine. They'll be able to have a say, so that our unaffiliated voters will no longer feel that they have to choose between the lesser of two evils in a general election. They can be part of helping to pick a nominee that really excites them. So again, thank you. This is Caspian. This is Cora. They'll be around as well. That's a very nice thing to do. Yeah, thank you. And I'll be around for a few minutes to visit, so thank you.
So you're Marlon's one Marlon teacher? Yeah, I teach over at Boulder High. Okay. So it's good.